Hello and welcome to We Were Just Wondering, a podcast brought to you by Wild Wonder and Wisdom. I'm Izzy and I'm so glad you've joined us. Over 6 episodes, we are diving into the Cornish Sea and wading through the countryside on a quest for answers to some very important questions. We're chatting to incredible people about the work they do with nature, young people and mental health here in our beautiful county, and we try to offer hope and inspiration in whatever we discuss. So, without further ado, let's go! In today's episode, we're going to be discussing one of my favourite things, food. Food is a really powerful force in our culture. It unites people, it can be hugely symbolic, and it keeps us alive. But it isn't all steak pies and popping candy. There is a darker side to food that we can't ignore. Over 10% of young people from reception age in the UK are considered obese. A worrying trend because eating and exercising habits are much more likely to be maintained in later life if they are begun during childhood. On top of this, eating disorders are becoming increasingly common among young people, in both girls and boys. And with the cost of living crisis on our doorsteps, food scarcity is also getting worse. I know I've started this off in a rather bleak way, but there is hope. There are countless charities and food projects dedicating themselves to reshaping the way us and our young people perceive food. Empowering young people to feel good about food is one of the most important things we could do in this moment. And at Wild Wonder and Wisdom, we try and embed this belief into our practice in every session we deliver. I caught up with Adele Hemming of Moor Seafood, who provides our young people with hot snacks at all of our outdoor activity sessions, to get a sense of why she does what she does and what she thinks food can do for young people. Apologies for the audio quality. We recorded this on my phone in the back of Kathy's car in a car park in St Austell. So we are just sat in the back of Kathy's car in Portmelon car park, and we've just had a bit of a feast, haven't we? So tell us what you cooked today, Adele.
So today they had meatball subs, which were very messy. Basically a baguette with meatballs in tomato sauce and then cheese on top. And yeah, it went down pretty well.
Yeah, I have to admit it was delicious, yeah. And we'll just start off with Adele introducing herself and just saying a little bit about what she does.
So yeah, I'm Adele and I run a catering company called Moor Food Co. And basically with that, me and my husband, we just sort of do any sort of catering that we can pick up that we enjoy doing. So we focus a lot on weddings and sort of big events like that. But yeah, then also I do lovely things with Wild Wonder and Wisdom. We do a little bit of private cooking. My husband does food catering up country and just bits and pieces like that. So awesome. It takes us some different directions. So.
Lovely. And yeah, Wild Wonder and Wisdom, as part of our little package, when we offer our multi-activity sessions, we always include a hot snack. And there's a lot of different reasons we do this. Not only to just give them something to eat and to feed them the day that we're doing it, because it's normally at dinner time, our activities, but there's a lot of other reasons we do it. And I think that it's really important to create healthy eating habits early on. You know, eating disorders are really high in younger people, especially girls. So getting those eating habits up and getting kids to see other kids eating foods that they might not have tried is a really nice way to introduce them to it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I find it's definitely when they're with peers, they're more willing to try things. It is quite a slow process with some of them, and I find that some of them first week they won't even come near the food, they don't want to know, and then gradually sort of over time they start to get a bit more interested in it, and because it's in such a relaxed environment, it's not like the pressure of at home or anything like that. I always say to them, if they want to try it but they don't like it, they can put it straight in the bin. Yeah. There's absolutely no pressure, and I think taking that pressure away from them they are then a bit more willing to try things. And it is quite interesting to watch. And we do now, the ones we've been working with for quite a while that have been coming along to the group, they are definitely a lot more up for trying things.
Yeah.
And they surprise themselves, which is lovely. And I quite often have parents coming back to me saying, oh, how did you do such and such that you cooked last week? Because my daughter or son or whatever was raving about it. So it's a nice way for them in a relaxed environment around friends to try new things, and also they can help me as well if they want to, if they're a bit nervous or if they're not enjoying the activity or they need a time out or anything like that. They can come to me and they can cook, and even sometimes they don't necessarily want to eat it, but just standing there chopping an onion, it's all skills that they don't know they're learning, but it's a good sort of time to sort of have a bit of mind space, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes a young person might feel really intimidated by a certain activity or a certain group of people, and just having an alternative space that they can go and have a distraction in is so valuable in that moment for them. And it means that they're not frightened by the whole experience. It means that they're more likely to come back because they know there's actually a safe space they can go to if they need a little break from the group, which is really great. Exactly. And I remember last week we were talking about one of our young people who is not really interested in eating like vegetables and stuff like that, and you'd made a leek and potato soup and he wanted seconds, didn't he?
Yeah, it was funny. It was one of those, soup's always a funny one because sometimes they love it and sometimes no one will touch it, so I thought, I'll do leek and potato, and not expecting many of them to have it. And pretty much all of them had at least had a bowl of it. And this one boy who very rarely eats with me, I got him to try a little bit just on a spoon, and then he had a whole bowl and then came back and had seconds, and that was probably the first time I've fed him properly. And then since then he's then come straight up and he's been happy to try what I've offered him. So it's very rewarding, definitely.
Amazing. Yeah, it's the little things that might not necessarily seem like a big deal, but actually for that young person that might be slowly changing their whole outlook on food, which is just such a valuable part of life, isn't it?
Exactly. We also do when it's a bit more better weather and stuff, I try and cook things that they can get involved and cook with me. The best ones we've done is just something simple like an omelette. Most children have never either tried an omelette or even seen how it's made, and then you show them and they're gobsmacked at how simple it is. And for me, that's teaching them a very simple skill that they can take for the rest of their lives. I mean, if you've got a couple of eggs in your fridge and a few different ingredients, they've got a meal, and it's a decent healthy meal as well. So that one is like a really good example of getting them involved. But we do try to I do chat to them as well at the beginning of the start of term sessions, and we do say, is there any ideas, anything people would like to either try cooking themselves or that they would like me to do for them? And that's quite nice because then they've then got a bit of participation from the beginning, really.
And they get to think about, okay, what ingredients do I actually like, what ingredients do I even know, and it's kind of getting them to actually engage with it, because when you're at home your parents buy your food. When you go shopping and you ask your mum, can I have this? Normally it's like, no, just put that back, please. So it's nice to have an adult, a role model who is there to actually empower them to take charge of what they're eating a little bit.
Definitely. And the food we cook, obviously we have a budget. I mean, it's not like we're a restaurant or anything like that, so we have a very small budget. So it's also teaching them that they can have these really simple, tasty, healthy meals on very little amount of money per person, which again is another massive skill going forward into their adult lives.
I think also one of the most beautiful things is cooking outside, and showing them that you can cook outside with a pretty good setup without that much hassle is also a really lovely thing for them to take into their future as well, I think.
We set up in all sorts of locations. in the woods,
rain,
the
in
beach,
the wind.
Now we're in a car park, so we do. So
amazing. Well, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you.
Lovely.
Cheers.
It was so lovely to have Adele on and to reflect on, what we do at Wild Wonder and Wisdom regarding food. So, many thanks to Adele, because I knew that she was a little bit nervous. I'll plug her company at the end just so you can find her if you want to. And next up, I have chatted with Mike Merelie, a geography teacher come culinary whiz working at Penrice Academy. Mike currently heads an extracurricular cooking club at his school, which, in his own words, tries to make young people fall in love with food, which is so lovely. And in the past, he also worked on a project in Bath to empower young people and vulnerable adults using the medium of food. It was a really humbling and humble conversation about a hugely important part of everybody's lives. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so hi, we're joined with Mike today from Penrice Academy. And first of all, Mike, could you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
So I'm one of the geography teachers at Penrice Academy, and as well as teaching my geography classes, I also run an after-school activity called Penrice Kitchen, which I set up a few years ago. So it's a bit of both. It's predominantly I'm in the classroom, and then every Wednesday I get to cook, which is a joy.
Awesome. And in the past, you were also part of a project in Bath, weren't you? Just tell me a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. So before we moved down to Cornwall a few years ago, I was working in Bath City Farm, and that was an amazing project. So we were working with adults and young people with learning difficulties or mental health problems, or sometimes both. And it was designed to help people make either a step towards work or to just allow people to have a meaningful activity where there was a really demonstrable outcome, either the cooking of food or the selling of food in a cafe at the city farm. So that was, I suppose I'd had that in my mind when I moved down to Cornwall and started teaching, that I wanted to sort of not replicate that experience, but draw from it and do something similar down here.
Awesome. And we'll go back in time a little bit before I ask you a little bit about those. And just tell me what your earliest memory of getting stuck into the kitchen or into cooking was.
I suppose earliest memory would be from my nana, my grandmother on my dad's side. So she was actually a home economics teacher, and or I think it was called domestic science then. But she taught cookery at school, and so when we'd go up and stay with her, a lot of our time, you know, as kids, me and my sister, a lot of our time when we were staying with her was in the kitchen, and she'd get us really roped into the cooking from a really early age. So you know, kind of as a toddler, probably standing on a chair in the kitchen, eating raw cake mixture out of a bowl. That's probably my earliest memory. Probably you know, hadn't been risk assessed.
No. Yeah, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about food, isn't it? Because it's such a human thing to eat. It's so intergenerational. It can connect people from any kind of background, from any age. And that is why one of the reasons that we use it at Wild Wonder and Wisdom, because it really can break barriers down. And personally, what do you think food means to you?
I think I'd echo a couple of things you've just said, really. I mean, we have to eat, and you can look at food in a really functional way, as in without it, we won't survive. And I think, you know, but I think it's power to, like you say, to unite people. It's power. One of my old friends from my cooking days in Bristol and Bath, he posted on Instagram and he said, the pizza I've made tonight will elate and elevate. And I thought, oh, I'm pinching that. That's fantastic. I think that power of food, whether it's something really humble that just really kind of, whether it's something really humble that just makes you feel really good, or something really kind of indulgent that's just really a real treat. I thought elevate and elate, I thought was brilliant, and I think that's probably why I love it so much, because you can eat to live, or it can be a really important part of your day and a really important part of your life. So I think I stick to those two words. I
totally agree, and I think it can be really cultural as well, can't it? Because a lot of people channel their culture into their food, and whilst I think a lot of people in maybe England don't think they have a culture, actually that home baking that you did with your grandma, that shepherd's pie that you'd learn once upon a time, making a pasta sauce with your mum, that is cultural as well. And I think that's a that's one of the things that means to me, because I realize actually some people don't know how to make these things, so that means something to me, and being able to impart that knowledge and share it and teach someone else how to create that thing is so beautiful. I just love that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think as soon as you said culture, I thought, you think, what is it about British cookery that's emblematic, that signifies this is a British dish? And I think because, as an island nation, and with all the sort of the influences that we as an island nation have had over centuries and millennia, it's a melting pot. So I don't think we have necessarily, we've got some iconic dishes and iconic food like pasties or scones. We've got some iconic food, but I think it's interesting what you say about culture, that that culture of handing down recipes, that culture of passing on knowledge and passing on skill and passing on the love of what you do. And I think I'd never really thought about it as that. I've never really thought about it in that way, as that being as being culturally significant. But actually, I think you're right. Those, and I think as a dad, we've got a little boy. He's 3, and one of his favourite things, even from being probably just about able to sit himself up, was to sit on the counter in the kitchen and watch what mummy and daddy were doing.
Yeah.
And now he was pouring his breakfast cereal the other day, and he was having Rice Krispies, and he said, "Oh, you can make these into nests with chocolate. You can make these into cakes." I was like, "Oh, that's brilliant." I mean, that's something he's seen someone else do. He saw it at a friend's house. It's like, "Oh, that's brilliant." So I think that culture of passing it on and of showing other people how joyful it can be, I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it from a cultural perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. And harking back then to all of the food projects that you've done and that you're a part of, what impact have you seen in your work? How did that Bath City Farm, what did that do for the people you were working with, do you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think you can, I think in some cases it's hard to know. I think you have to kind of trust that showing someone how to cook something, or cooking something for someone that they maybe haven't eaten before, the transformation may not manifest itself until later on down the line. It may not be immediate that you see that response.
Yeah.
But I think where you do see the response immediately is in confidence, and being able to see that kind of maybe slightly intimidating, right, here's the table of ingredients, here's all the things that we're going to process and manipulate and turn into food. I think the sense of, wow, that empowerment of I did that, through using my brain and my hands and the skills that I've got, I transformed ingredients into something that somebody wants and that somebody will love. And I think that's really empowering. I think particularly, for students who maybe don't often feel that sense of, wow, I did that in a classroom or on a football pitch or on a sport in a sports lesson, in a PE lesson. They get a sense of, actually, I can make something beautiful and valuable. And I think that's profound. That they have that experience. It may be that what they take away from it is, oh, well, in later life, I'll be able to feed myself, or I might be able to cook for my friends or my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whatever. I've got something I can do. And I think in the context of school, in the context of previous projects, it may be something that people think, actually, I didn't know what my thing was. I didn't know what I had an affinity for, but I'm loving this and I could do this for a job. I could set up a business doing this. And I think those little kind of starting points are really important. And they, I think, come out of just being in the kitchen and thinking, oh, I made something great. And that might be something I can do again. So quite a rambling answer to your question, but I think...
No, you totally hit all the different points there. And I definitely think that for young people, you have to open so many doors before certain people know, oh, actually, I really enjoyed that. Some people just don't enjoy many things. And if you don't open the door for them, they never really know. So especially if their parents aren't really that into cooking, which I think quite a lot of people have that. Their parents just aren't really into it. So just having projects where you can open the door for that young person and think, oh, actually, I really liked that. I can go and do that another time.
Yeah. And I think within what you're saying, I think it is pretty much exactly it, is that I think it's really easy to come across as being overzealous and wanting to kind of everyone to fall in love with cooking. But actually, I think you're right. You're just opening the door. You're saying, look, the kitchen is this space where everyone belongs, everyone can be part of this process, and everyone has a job to do, and everyone's going to contribute, and everyone's going to be part of that team. And it may be that some people come away from it and go, okay, I cooked something nice and that was it. But I think, for others, it might be, wow, that's my thing. That's what I really want to do.
Yeah.
And I think just presenting it, just having it there and holding that space so people can come along and go, yeah, that's not for me. I'm glad I did it and I've got a new skill. Or that pivotal moment where they go, okay, I could do something here. I haven't had that feeling in a lesson or playing or doing here, but I'm having that kind of that light bulb moment now. And I think, holding that space for that to happen is really important.
Exactly, yeah. And I think one of the things that I wish somebody had told me when I was a kid was, how can I cook on a budget? Because I always thought making curry from scratch was really expensive, or making a pie from scratch was really expensive, but making pastry cost me about 20p now. It's like actually having that. And I don't know if that's something you integrate into your after school club, but I definitely think it's something to be talked about, because kids need to be shown that their parents' budget can make something, that can make something more than they know.
It's funny. It's funny you mention it, because yesterday when we met as our little collective, as our Penrice kitchen, I said, right, for next week, our challenge is to cook 2 courses, and our budget is £2 a head. And we had a really good discussion, and I put the question to the students, said, okay, what is it that costs the money? Where does the money go? And it took a little bit of kind of discussion, but we agreed that actually it's protein that costs money. It's meat and dairy where a lot of the money's going to go. So how do we kind of make sure that what we cook has that balance, and it's delicious, but it also sustains us? So we then start to talk about, well, where could that protein come from? Could we use pulses? Could we use chickpeas? Could we use beans, just to kind of get that balance? And we talked a little bit about things like pancetta and chorizo, that kind of, you get a little bit goes a long way. Where a little bit of meat, a little bit of something really kind of maybe a bit luxurious, if you kind of do something smart with that, you can actually create something without having to sort of spend lots and lots of money. And I think students who are looking, young people who are kind of looking out, thinking, okay, what's next? They're in this landscape of rising cost of living, and I think they are aware that actually, they're going to have to make some of those budgetary decisions. And I think, we go back to the idea of sort of empowerment and skills. And I think in the context of Penrice Kitchen, what we've been able to kind of explore is that the value of your own time. Because if you buy a ready meal, what you're buying is convenience. You're buying the fact that you can just stick it in the microwave and there you go. And I think for a lot of people, cooking is seen as this kind of huge chore, and that will eat up lots of time. So as well as thinking, well, how do we cook without spending loads of money? We're thinking, how do we just work efficiently and cook, and so that cooking is integrated in family life or integrated in life. And that's hard, because now as a dad, where, the ability to just go into the kitchen, stick on an album and just have a couple of hours of just luxurious, stress-free cooking, that's not going to happen for 2 decades. That's not going to happen for a long time. So thinking, well, okay, how does cooking work in family life? How do you maintain that kind of culture of eating together, cooking together, so that it isn't just someone in the kitchen for an hour and a half stressing and sweating. And I think that's maybe a barrier to people getting involved, because I totally understand. I totally get it that there is that kind of pressure, there is that time. So just trying to sort of be a bit creative about it as well.
There was so much in what you said there that made me think about how like almost holistic food can be, because not only are you thinking these kids are, and as you said in earlier on, it's subtle. The effects of teaching kids food is subtle, because they might not know that they've got that knowledge until they leave home, you know. But just having planted the seed is so important. And you're teaching them budgeting and finances, financial well-being. You're teaching them time management. You're teaching them social skills. You're teaching them cooking skills. You're teaching them to understand the science of their food. Like, there's so much there that an hour and a half of cooking with a child can achieve. And I think that's so powerful. I just think that's so awesome.
Yeah, I've never really no one's ever kind of deconstructed it quite as neatly as that. And I think it's quite humbling really to sort of hear it put in those terms, because I think for me it was, I think those things were embedded, but when you're explicit about them, you think actually, yeah, what you do in that
activity
activity cuts across so many really important areas. So yeah, it's really nice to hear it put back in that way.
Exactly. And I think right now is probably a really, really important time to be talking about food, especially with young people, because as we know, the rise of social media and the rise of screen time has led to a lot of young people experiencing eating disorders. And I'm not sure whether that's something that you have had firsthand experience of or not, but how do you think that schools and food projects can encourage young people to perhaps try new things or develop healthier eating patterns, I suppose?
Well, I think one of the things you touched upon when you sort of deconstructed what happens in a cooking class or in a food project, I think one of the things that you mentioned is the development of social skills. And one of the things I always try to kind of make sure we have time to do, as well as cooking together, is to eat together. And so that we have a chance to discuss, we have a chance to just enjoy, quite convivial, you know, just at the end of a bit of cooking, we sort of sit down, pull some stools around and kind of just, you know, reflect on the food, have a chat about how the day's gone. It's just a little bit of time. And that's just not to say that that's, you know, is going to solve lots of problems, but I think it's an important part of, like you say, food being holistic, and that it creates those social, that it creates that social time if you want it to. I think, I don't know, I mean, I see the impact social media has on students, and how it can be not just a distraction, but can become all-consuming. And I think there is something I find, you know, if I'm sitting in the lounge, I'll grab my phone, but if I'm in the kitchen because I'm cooking, it's not really there because I'm engaged in what I'm doing. And so I think the engagement in something meaningful, and the fact that it can take time, that it requires you to focus for more than a minute or two, that you have to kind of engage in the process, I think is helpful. And I think, you know, one of the discussions we quite often have, you know, in thinking about the things that we've cooked within Penrice Kitchen and in other sort of food projects that I've worked in and been part of, I think it's just deconstructing the idea of simply putting food into healthy or unhealthy categories. And actually thinking it's your approach to food, and it's your diet, and it's how that looks over the course of your life, rather than just, you know, a thing that you eat. Because I think there's plenty, you know, indulgent treats are life-affirmingly good. You should enjoy them. But, you know, a salad and some lentils might, you know, kind of balance it out. And I think being really honest about the fact that, you know, it's a bit like musical taste, isn't it? You know, you'll have music that you really love to listen to, and then you'll have your guilty pleasures, and, you know, you need both, really. So I think we've never shied away from, you know, we've never really shied away from using butter or clotted cream or bacon, but we've done that really as part of, okay, this is what good food looks like. And it's not that every day all the time. That's the indulgent treat. That's the bit that stands out as the little kind of the indulgence. But then, you know, we'll cook a chickpea curry, which is, you know, has pretty much, you know, sort of, you know, fat-free essentially. You know, it's so I think being honest about good, and I don't even like to use the word diet. I think just a positive approach to food in which you embrace the indulgent and you embrace the simple. And I think the two have to go hand in hand.
Yeah, two quotes have popped into my head after listening to you say that. So one of them was, it's talking about all animals, and it says animals have a diet, but humans go on a diet. Like, what's that come from? You know, like why do we have that? No, we actually have a diet, rather than distinguishing between different diets. We are humans and we are omnivores, and that is how we eat and that is how we live. So like, food is our fuel, and that is how we should perceive it. But I totally agree. I don't like the word diet anymore. I think it's so loaded that we have to be really careful about how we use it, especially when talking to younger people. And the other one that came up was your use of the word indulgent, because indulgent is slightly loaded as well. But someone said to me once, self-compassion is not self-indulgence. So maybe you should talk about compassionate food, and you should say, actually, having that bacon is being compassionate to yourself, but having the rest means that you're still looking after your body. So it's nice to have that balance. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really nice way of putting it. I think you're right. Indulgent maybe does sound a bit loaded, and I agree with you about diets. I think there seems to be a sort of compulsion to kind of decide which camp you're in, and are you a flexitarian or a pescatarian, and like you say, I mean, I think, you know, we as a species, we're omnivorous, and a quote I like is eat food, not too much, mainly plants, and I think
I love that. That's so spot on.
I know, because there are hundreds of books and there are hundreds of influencers out there, sort of with various approaches, and I just think I wish I could remember who's responsible for that quote. I'll have to Google it after this. I used to know who said that, but yeah, eat food, not too much, mainly plants. I thought, well, actually, if you stick to that, and within that you're compassionate with yourself, because, you know, cream teas are delicious, then you know, you're probably I think what struck me the other day, actually, I was eating out, and one of the things that's changed is that restaurants, certainly larger restaurants, now have to show the calories on each menu item. I think, that's an interesting evolution. You know, do I want to be reminded of that when I'm ordering, you know, when I'm being compassionate with myself and ordering a massive burger that I'm really looking forward to? And I thought that's interesting that it's sort of pervading into that into that sort of territory. And I know for some people, you know, being really mindful and specific about the amount of calories they consume is going to be important. I completely get that. But I kind of, you know, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about well-being and about our mental health. And one of the things that I think about is tuning into what my body wants and what I crave. And sometimes it is something, you know, quite lavish, or it's something, actually sometimes, you know, we have Monday night tea at home and it's like the most basic food, because actually, you know, after a weekend where we might have been out, we might have had a takeaway and we've had quite a lot of, you know, maybe a brunch or something like that. Then on a Monday, it's just, actually, do you know what, I want a jacket potato with cheese in it.
Yeah,
and being honest with ourselves and being responsive to what our body's kind of craving and what we think would make us feel good. I think compassion is such a good word. I think
I totally agree.
Interpret that.
Tuning into that body feeling rather than judging your diet on other things. And, you know, you're talking about calories there, and I think calories are really misunderstood, because if you've done a hard day of exercise, you know, that high calorie is not going to be as high calorie as if you had sat down all day. So having that calorie there, I think people assume that high calories is bad, but that's really not the case, is it? And that's why I think having those calories could probably be misleading for quite a lot of people, actually.
I think you could be right. I mean, you know, they base it, I think, on a sort of a typical daily amount, but like you say, it depends what you've done in that. It depends what you've done in that day. So I suppose, like I said, it makes it, maybe it is, for some people it really helps to have something, a metric that they can, you know, a number that they can sort of assess and evaluate, an actual number. But I think, like you say, tuning in to what it is you want and what will feel good, I think that's really important.
Yeah. And one of the final questions then, what are your hopes for the future? And it's very broad, but you can kind of take it in whatever direction you want, whether it's for Penrice Kitchen or for children in general.
Wow, that is a very broad question. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of, yeah, it's a really difficult one to answer. And I suppose, I mean, thinking about, you know, the options that you gave me, my sort of vision for Penrice Kitchen, I set that up with quite a simple agenda, which was to give people the opportunity to fall in love with cooking. That was really it. You know, it was intended towards students who maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity elsewhere. And it's evolved, and I think a couple of things that have evolved from it are the fact that students have realised they're capable of creating value, that they can create something that either their friends and family might want to eat or that they could sell. And I think in the Cornish context, that idea of enterprise and of entrepreneurship, I think is really important.
Yeah.
So I think for some of the students who've been part of Penrice Kitchen, if they can take that forward and they set up food businesses, or what they've realized is they have the potential to create value and they set up a business that's nothing to do with food. You know, that's not the outcome. The outcome is that they've been empowered to think, I can make something I can bring something into this world. I can create something that has value that somebody wants. And then the second thing I think, you know, related to that is that the students who've been part of Penrice Kitchen have been part of it now for 2 years. They've acquired a lot of skill in terms of culinary skill. And I think the opportunity now and the hope for the future is that students who are lower down in the school, years 8, year 9, can come into that setting. And it's not necessarily me who's standing at the front leading and showing the way. It's those students who've had a couple of years of being in that environment who can say, right, this is how we dice an onion. When you're frying it, make sure you regulate the heat. Just that opportunity to build leadership, that opportunity to turn that confidence and that skill into something that they can then bring other people with them. And again, for students going out into the world where, you know, it's going to be increasingly competitive, where jobs are being automated, the ability to step forward and say, I can do this, I can make a decision, I can lead. I think, again, if that's an outcome from this, then that's all to the good.
Yeah. I think that what you just said there could actually translate to all children in Cornwall and in England and the UK, you know, to give all children the opportunity to love cooking or to find the beauty in cooking. I think that's definitely something that all children should have, you know. That's definitely a goal I would take on and be like, I really hope that more projects like yours start up in different schools around Cornwall to give those kids who don't have that opportunity to learn to love cooking. 100%.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's not always easy. I think, you know, you're constrained by time. There's always pressure on time, isn't there? But I think the fact that I'm really grateful that the school was supportive, and when I pitched it to them, say, yeah, I basically want to set up this. I want to just get a load of kids together, and I'm just going to be like Gordon Ramsay at them, but they'll fall in love with cooking through the process. You know, I think that was, you know, I'm really grateful that the school had the trust in my vision for it, because it was quite nebulous. But actually what you said is right. The pitch was, I want to create a time and space for students to fall in love with cooking. It's not about getting a GCSE. It's not about entering a competition. It's cooking together, eating together, and reflecting on that. So it felt like it needed to be more, but it's never needed to be more than that.
Amazing. And this is the wild card question.
Oh, right. Oh, not the one before. What do I hope for the future? Okay.
No, this is the wild card question I always do, and I don't put it on the list. And it's, if you could give your 10-year-old self one piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Trust your judgment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That was
Trust your
quick.
judgment.
That was probably the quickest I've ever had. That was really, really. It's like you thought about that before.
No, I haven't, and I couldn't have predicted. I couldn't have predicted that question. But I think it's interesting now being in a position where, you know, with teaching and seeing students learn and helping students learn, and quite often the stumbling block isn't their lack of knowledge. They actually know a lot more than they think.
Yeah.
And being able to kind of trust your judgment, hold your hand up if it's not right, and go, okay, fair enough. But to kind of have that courage of your convictions and to trust your judgment, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
that's amazing. I totally agree as well. I've seen it in young people before, where I've helped some young people like with exams and stuff before, and they'll be sat there, and I'll be like, okay, so how do you answer this question? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. And then with a little bit of nudging, they know exactly what to do. It was just they didn't want to say something wrong. They were doubting themselves so much. So actually trusting their judgment, you know, that's a life-changing thing to have, to be able to trust your judgment and just go out there and be like, actually, I'm just going to be confident in what I'm saying. I'm going to do it. And if I'm wrong, I'll accept it. But actually, I'm just going to go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely that.
Awesome. Oh, well, it was great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was good to. I mean, I talked about food for a while. It was great. You know, I think, yeah, I just, like you say, for young people in Cornwall, that opportunity, in whatever shape it comes, whether it's in a classroom or in a school or you know, out doing sort of, you know, wild cooking outside, whatever form that takes, there is something just inherently good about cooking.
Yeah, 100%. Well, best of luck with the rest of Penrice Kitchen, and yeah.
Thank you.
Take
See you
care.
soon. Bye.
Bye.
What a wonderful conversation that was. I really, really enjoyed chatting with Mike, and I felt like we both started to look at food from a different perspective throughout our chat. And I hope that you guys can take some nugget of knowledge or perspective from it too. We're nearly at the end of the show, but before we close for today, I would just like to let you know where you can find out a little bit more information about our guests. Adele can be found on Facebook by searching for the Moor to Seafood Company. That's Moor as in Moor, to Sea as in SEA Food Co. So that's the Moor to Seafood Co. And Mike can be contacted via Penrice Academy by searching for penriceacademy.org or calling the school on 01726 721 63. And I'd also like to signpost some helplines if you or a young person you know is struggling with any of the things that were mentioned in this episode today. Firstly, there is Anorexia and Bulimia Care. You have a helpline that you can contact on 03000 111213. That's 03000 111213. Or you can find their website by searching for Anorexia and Bulimia Care. Or you can visit the Overeaters Anonymous site by searching for oagb.org.uk. That's oagb.org.uk. And they offer support groups all over the country, which might be helpful to you. And finally, the mental health charity Mind has an eating problems section on their website, which is really, really helpful, full of good contacts and support and information. So please do check that out if you feel you might have some concerns surrounding food. Thank you so much for listening today, as always, and I hope that these conversations have given you some food for thought, no pun intended, a little bit of learning, or even simply just something pleasant to listen to in your spare time. Until next time, goodbye and have a beautiful week.